Hi guys, this is a casual fan. The first qualifying session of the 2023 Formula 1 season is done and dusted, and we have Max Verstappen on pole position. This will be his 21st pole position, and well, let's be fair, this was one of the more exciting qualifying sessions that we've seen in a while. For the first time in a long time, we had not one, not two, not three, but four different teams possibly in contention for pole position. It wasn't until the last Q3 session that we ultimately found out which teams were probably going to compete for pole and which weren't. Now, in this video, I'm going to keep it brief. The main purpose of this video is recapping what happened and giving my view on the race ahead. So in this video, there will be three parts. The first part will be me talking about basically what happened during the qualifying. Second will be me sharing my key takeaways from qualifying. The third part will be me giving my race predictions for tomorrow. So without further ado, let's get straight to it. Okay, first of all, before we proceed, a word from our partner PureVPN. When you're surfing the internet, all sorts of hackers track every move you make. Your internet service provider knows exactly what you're browsing. You want to put a stop to that? Use PureVPN. That's not all, because as F1 fans from all over the world, we love the coverage from Sky Sports and Servus TV. With PureVPN, just select Austria as your geolocation and stream the race without any extra charges. Sitting here in India, one thing that bothers me is that we cannot even see the interview clips on Sky Sports Twitter account. Well, they are geo-blocked. PureVPN helps to find a way through that. A simple sign-up process gets you on board, and a simple navigation system will help you choose whichever location you want to access that content from. You can join me as well and enhance your overall experience on the internet. Sign up to PureVPN by clicking the link in the description box and open the doors to an amazing experience. Now let's get back to the video. Okay, now talking about qualifying, well, we had Q1, in which once again, true to form, Fernando Alonso, he looked like a driver who was going to be in prime position to fight for pole. He arguably had pretty competitive lap at the beginning. Ferrari also showed its hand finally, and both Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz put together competitive times. I think it was Carlos Sainz who led the timesheets in the early stages. Then we had, once the session was over, we had, well, surprise, Pierre Gasly eliminated in Q1. We also had, I think Kevin Magnussen was also a surprise elimination at that stage. Oscar Piastri, he also got eliminated in Q1. Not a great result, but in that McLaren, I don't think much can be expected. Then in Q2, it was, well, again, one thing that was quite obvious was that all these midfield teams, they were very close in terms of performance. And at the end of the day, it came down to the driver that was able to nail that perfect lap at the perfect time. The drivers that able to do it and qualify for Q3. Now the top four teams, well, they had all their drivers qualifying to Q3. And the last two slots went to Nico Hülkenberg and Esteban Ocon. Both of them put together sensational laps, and they were able to qualify in Q3. The drivers that were left out, they included Lando Norris, Albon, Tsunoda, and the two Alfa Romeos. Now in Q3, ultimately, both Ferrari and Red Bull, they took things up a notch. And we had Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen. After the first round of soft tire runs, we had both Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen separated by just 1/10 in favor of Max Verstappen. Charles Leclerc opted not to do a second run, and he opted to save the tire for the race. On the other hand, in the end, we had Max Verstappen, his teammate Sergio Perez, and Carlos Sainz, who were in the running for pole position. It did appear to be a bit more interesting and a bit more enticing than one would have hoped, as Max had a yellow first sector. However, he was able to hold on to it and he clinched pole position. Sergio Perez was able to seal a front row start. Carlos Sainz was fourth. Charles Leclerc was third. So we have all Red Bull first row, all Ferrari second row, then Fernando Alonso in P5, George Russell in P6, Lewis Hamilton P7, and in P8 we had Lance Stroll. In P9 we had Esteban Ocon, and in P10 we had Nico Hülkenberg. So all in all, arguably one of the more interesting and one of the more intense qualifying sessions, in which, to be fair, we didn't have much of an idea how the pecking order was going to be. Okay, so now the recap of qualifying is done. Now let's move to the key takeaways from the qualifying session. Now, first of all, a word for Nico Hülkenberg. What a sensational comeback. Now you have to feel good about him because, let's be fair, Mick Schumacher has a lot of fans. And in all fairness, I'm one of them. But there was a section that hated Nico Hülkenberg. They did not understand why Haas was trying to go for someone who has not even driven in Formula 1 for a complete season since 2019. They had their doubts. The thing is, many of them don't even know, and they've not even seen Hülkenberg race. Having said that, when Hülkenberg came back, even I had my doubts, to be very honest. My primary doubt was when Hülkenberg was in his previous innings in Formula 1, the aim was to ultimately reach a stage where he can fight for podiums, wins, and championships because of the kind of junior career he had. Now he's coming. He doesn't have that in. He does not have any pressure to win the championship. He knows that ship has sailed. But the thing is, with that, will he even have the motivation to push himself? Will he be in a position where he's able to express himself in the best possible way? I had those doubts. After the first race weekend, I think I can be confident enough to say that he has cleared all those doubts. He's as good as he has ever been. It was a timely reminder of his talent, and most importantly, in my view, I think he will dominate Kevin Magnussen this season, and I don't think it will be a surprise. At number 2, well, for now, expect drivers to win the midfield battles for the teams. The thing is, from P5 to P10 in the pecking order, the gap between teams in terms of performance is minimal. There's hardly anything. Literally hardly anything. And that was on evidence when we saw the qualifying session in Q1 and in Q2. Because we had, on one side, we have Esteban Ocon in P9, the position where he'll start the race. On the other hand, we have Pierre Gasly in P20. Both of them same team, and both of them were performing at a pretty much similar levels. The difference was that when the time was there and when someone had to pull a lap out of the bag, Esteban Ocon was able to do it. Pierre Gasly was not. Similarly, Nico Hülkenberg P10 and Kevin Magnussen, he was eliminated in Q1. At the end of the day, at least in the first few races, I think it's quite obvious now that we can make such a claim that the difference will be entirely based on how a driver performs. These cars are quite similar in pace. Ultimately, it will be the driver's skill that is going to make a difference. Now, moving to the third point, Alpine and McLaren will be disappointed. Well, talking about McLaren, I think we all knew that the car was just not there. They made it quite sure that everyone knew that this is not the car they'll try to compete the entire season with. Developments are coming, improvements are coming, and so on. So McLaren was something, it was an open book and everyone knew what was going to happen. Having said that, the car still performed better than what I expected. I had McLaren in P8 in my view. I don't think it is the 8th fastest car on the grid right now. It is probably better. At least it is competitive with Alfa Romeo and to an extent even Alpine as well. On the other hand, talking about Alpine, I'm disappointed. Fair and simple. The comments that have been made have been around Alpine escaping the midfield and trying to distance itself from P5 and get closer to P3. That was supposed to be the aim. But when you look at the final qualifying session in Q3, it's clear as day that Alpine is still where it was last season. It is around 1.2 seconds. Esteban Ocon's lap is 1.2 seconds behind the lap put together by Max Verstappen. That's pretty much where it was last season as well. Where's the improvement? Nothing. The kind of improvement that Alpine was targeting It was achieved by Aston Martin on the other hand. Aston Martin is now a part of the front running group. Alpine, on the other hand, is still struggling to make its way into Q3. It was not the target, and Alpine should be seriously disappointed with the kind of position it finds itself in at this moment. Now, the next point, Mercedes is under pressure. I think it's safe to say that Mercedes is now the fourth fastest team on the grid. The single lap pace is just not there. The race run, even on Friday, what we've seen, it's not as competitive as it should be. It's probably better than its single lap pace, but it's not a significant improvement. To be fair, if we take a look at the race run simulations, we had Red Bull at the top, Aston Martin in second, then we had Ferrari and Mercedes somewhat intermingling with each other, because Ferrari, while it had quicker pace at the earlier part of the stint, the tire degradation was quite a bit. On the other hand, we had Mercedes with a more steady pace, but that pace was much slower than what Red Bull or Aston Martin was showing. Tire degradation was fine, but there's no benefit if the car is not quick enough. Right now, Mercedes is not in a position to even competitively fight for podiums, to be honest. Even if they're looking to make improvements, those improvements need to come earlier, because you can't have races where Verstappen is P1 and Lewis is P6 or P7. You're not going to win championships, and you're not going to cover up those kinds of gaps. Mercedes is in trouble and it is struggling. It needs to be either proactive or needs to find a solution, because if that is not the case, 2023 Formula 1 season is gone. That's just my view. I don't know, maybe the team will surprise me tomorrow, but for now it does appear that entirely the season is hanging in the balance and they need to improve fast. And now finally, Red Bull will not be dominating this season. Now, I was one of the few people that cautioned against the doomsday proclamations that have been made by quite a few pundits, that Red Bull is going to be off into the distance and you'll have Mercedes, Ferrari and Aston Martin fighting amongst themselves. That was the perception that we had before we came to Bahrain. Let's be fair, that is not the case. Red Bull, I think it is still the quickest car on the grid, but the gap is not huge. It's a tenth or a couple of tenths at best, and it is a tenth or a couple of tenths at Bahrain. There could easily be a scenario where at the other tracks you might see teams like Ferrari or even Aston Martin make a jump. 2/10 of a second is not a huge gap. It's not the kind of gap that defines a car, and it's not the kind of gap that is going to ultimately result in dominance. If at the end of the day Verstappen ends up winning, let's say, all first 6 races this season, then he's going to have to earn it. These are not going to be simple dominated races like the one he had in Spa last season. That's not going to be the case. He's not going to have significant car advantage. At the end of the day, for us, that's the best possible news, because all we want is competition. It does look like we're going to get it. Okay, now finally, the race predictions. Now take them with a pinch of salt, because let's be fair, quite a few of them are going to be wrong. Now first, the midfield battle is going to be very intense. Now the reason why I say that is because primarily we don't know what the race pace is going to be for any team. There is some idea in terms of how an Alpine is going to perform. We've seen those race runs. There is not a clear idea of how good or how bad McLaren is going to be, especially in the hands of Lando Norris, who was able to place that car in P11. Secondly, what was a welcome surprise was the kind of pace that was extracted by Yuki Tsunoda and Alex Albon. What this shows is that both Williams and AlphaTauri are in the battle. What we have is the 5th fastest team to the 10th fastest team. Any of these teams' drivers can end up scoring points. Who is it going to be? It's anybody's guess, but that makes the entire thing quite fun and interesting. Next, points for Ocon and Norris, but not for Stroll. Now, when I talk about this, the primary thing that I take into consideration is the long run pace from Esteban Ocon. This has been the forte for Alpine, to be honest. The car has been able to display a good long run pace. Plus, Ocon is starting in P9, and let's be fair, it was quite an impressive qualifying session from him. So yeah, I think Ocon will be in points. I'm not entirely sure how good Haas in the hands of Hulkenberg is going to be. First of all, he's coming back after almost 3 years. He will be rusty. Then there's also this fact that Haas did not have the best long run pace. The tire degradation was quite a bit, and it hurt the car a lot. If we take these things into consideration, it's very tough to imagine how good Hulkenberg is going to be. I have my doubts. I think he might not score points this time around. Then talking about Norris, entirely a question mark. I have no idea how good McLaren is going to be. No clue. I don't know. But because it is Norris, and he's just been the kind of driver that extracts such brilliant pace out of the car, that I can't ignore it. Just because Norris is driving that McLaren, I'm saying he'll score points. Now coming to Stroll, I am not in favor of him driving the car this weekend. To be honest, he should not be in the race. That man is a walking hazard right now. It was uncomfortable to see him lifting his hands on the straight. And that was when he was driving alone on the track during his long runs. Tomorrow during the race, he will be part of a group, of an entire midfield group. At that point in time, how is he going to react? It's a huge question mark. I don't think he can survive the entire race if after 10 laps of the long run, he had to make that many adjustments. I don't think it's possible, and I don't think he score points. Next, I have Ferrari, and Mercedes might struggle. Now, Ferrari is starting the race on the second row. Now, to be fair, compared to yesterday, Ferrari has made a major jump in performance. It's clear as day. The car was not as good yesterday in terms of single lap pace. Charles Leclerc was quite vocal. He said he was not fighting for pole position on Saturday. But, well, today he was. He was only a tenth away. Having said that, there are question marks over the race pace of Ferrari. Why? Because Ferrari has not shown strong race pace in the preseason and even during the long runs in the race weekend. It has not shown that. And I'm very skeptical of how the race is going to pan out. Then on the other hand, Mercedes, I think I shared a bit about it, how the car is looking. The car is stable. Andrew Shovlin has been quoted as saying that they might be able to fight for podiums. I'm not entirely sure, to be very honest. I don't know. At the end of the day, when it comes to it, these two teams are going to struggle, especially with Mercedes, because it is starting at P6 and P7. I don't know what kind of result the team is going to be happy with, but it's not a good look. Next, I have Fernando Alonso scores a podium. Now, as you can see, there are two basic reasons why I'm stating something like this. The first is the kind of long run pace that Aston Martin showed. On Friday, the 10 lap stint, I think something like that Alonso did on soft tires was neck and neck, at par with what Max Verstappen did. There was so much similarity in the lap times between the two drivers that at the end of the day, even if there have been changes to the car that have been made, engine modes have been increased or decreased, what we can safely say is that there might be a case where Alonso would have the race pace to compete with the Red Bulls. There is a possibility. I'm not entirely sure, but there is a possibility. The prediction is that at the least, Fernando Alonso is scoring a podium at Bahrain. That's just my view. Now finally, the final prediction is that Max Verstappen wins the race. Well, the reasoning behind this is quite simple. Max Verstappen has been peerless. Plus, the car that he has under his disposal, it was easily the best race car on Friday. I think that was quite clear. The only struggles were over a single lap where Max was not able to hook a lap properly. He struggled with the setups a lot on the first day where he was playing catch up even to Sergio. Now all those things seem to have been taken care of. I think it's safe to say that unless he has a crash, he has a DNF, a reliability issue, someone hits him from behind at the start of the race, He has a poor start, basically something out of the ordinary. Unless something out of the ordinary happens, Max Verstappen is the favorite to win the race. Having said that, this is my final prediction. So I hope you guys liked the video. I'll try to keep it more concise in the future. I don't think I've been able to do that good a job this time around. I hope you guys liked the video. I really hope it was informative. To be honest, I'm excited about how the 2023 Formula 1 season is going to be. I was a bit nervous because initially looking at testing, I worried if Red Bull was just too far ahead. Fortunately, that is not the case. This is going to be an interesting season. I'm excited. I'm recording it at 2 a.m. in the morning in India. I hope you guys like it. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Also, please like, share it with your friends and subscribe. Thanks for watching and see you next time.